In this section, we are going to learn about plotting points on the Cartesian coordinate system. Cartesian coordinate system, also known as the rectangular coordinate system. What we've done is we've taken two number lines, this one across here, and this one up and down. We've crossed them at the point 0. We call this one the x-axis, the horizontal one, and we call this vertical one the y-axis. We cross them at the point in the middle. What's the middle? They go forever. But we're going to call it 0. And this is called the origin. So this is a grid, and every point on this grid has a coordinate. That's where the word coordinate comes from. The coordinate is an x value and a y value. The x value, we always write it first, and the y value, we always write it second, and we write them in these parentheses with a comma between them. The x value is always found on this x-axis, so the point is always either above or below that number, that x-coordinate on the graph. The y-coordinate is always either to the left or right of the point. So, for example, this point right here has the coordinate 3, -4. It has the x-coordinate as 3 because it's right below the 3 on the x-axis. It has the y-coordinate -4 because it's right across from the -4. What point is this one right here? Look at what it's across from and what it's underneath of. It's underneath of the -6. It's across from the -2. So the name of this point, its coordinate, is -6, -2. Well, let's go down here and look at a few more of these. What about this point right here? That point is 2, 6, because it's above the 2, and across from the 6. What about one that's actually touching the axis? This one right here. What's it above on the x-axis? If I look down, it's above the 0. So its x value, or x coordinate, is 0. It's right on the 3 on the y-axis, so the point is 0, 3. This one's right on the x-axis, so its x value is 7. Its y value, what's it across from? It's across from the 0, so its y value is 0. The point is 7, 0. It's actually touching the axis. We call it an intercept. An intercept. So if it's touching the x-axis, we call it an x-intercept. And if it's touching the y-axis, we call it a y-intercept. And of course the one in the middle that is both, 0, 0, we call an xy intercept. Now, going the other direction, let's suppose I want to graph the point 2, -5. How would I go about graphing that point? X is always first, so I'm going to look on the x-axis till I find the 2, and then I'm going to go either up or down until I'm across from the -5. So in this case, I'm going to have to go down come across from the negative 5? What if I wanted to do the point negative 3, 8? Okay, first I have to find negative 3 on the x-axis, and then I'm going to move up or down until I'm across from the 8. So that's going to be right here. Okay. Often, instead of writing these points out in these parentheses like this, we write them in a table. Sometimes people call this a t-table. So the x-coordinates are under the x column, and the y-coordinate are underneath the y. So let's say we have, say these. This is the same thing as the points 2, 3, negative 4, 5, and 0, negative 6. So it's just another way of writing these. What we're going to do in this section is graph lines using the tables. Then we're going to plot the points. So we first have to create the table, then we have to plot the point. To create the table, we're going to choose either an x or y value. We're going to substitute that in the equation, or what's that slang? Plug it in. We're going to substitute that value, or plug it in, into the equation and solve for the other variable. In other words, we can choose either the x or the y, put it in the table, put it in the equation, solve for the other one, put that one in the table, and then we have both of them, so we have a point that we can plot. Okay, let's actually look at an example of doing this. Suppose we want to plot the equation y equals 2x minus 3. So I'm going to first make a table. So in my table, I have to choose x or y and then find the other one. Okay, well, y is all by itself, so remember that section we did on formulas? The letter that was by itself was easily solved for by plugging the other ones in. So since y is by itself, we'll choose the x's. Now to create a line, only 2 points are needed. And that's what's going to be needed when you graph in my math lab, only 2 points, because that's all that's needed. Often people will suggest, sometimes very strongly suggest, that you find a third point, but that's really just an assurance point to help you see that yes, all 3 of these are in a line, so I am doing it the right way. So if you would like to check yourself and find a third one, when you're working on your paper, that's a good idea. When you're working in my math lab, you only need 2 points. So I can pick any value I want. What do I want? I think I'll pick 0. So I'm picking x to be 0. So I'm going to come down here. And I'm going to replace the x with a 0 and work this out. 2 times 0 is 0. And 0 minus 3 is negative 3. So now that I have found this, I'm going to go back up here and put the negative 3 into the equation. Remember, that gives me the point 0 comma negative 3. Come over here under the 0 and go down to the negative 3, and I get this point. I need a second one, so let me pick another number. Let's see, how about 2? You can pick any number you want. And if you picked a different number than me, it doesn't matter. It's going to still work out. Because down here, I'm going to replace the x with a 2. Because I chose 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. And 4 minus 3 is 1. So I'm going to come back up here and put my 1. So this is the point 2, comma 1. I'll go over to the 2, and then I have to go up or down till I'm across from the 1. So I'm at the 2, I have to go up to get across from the 1. And now I need to draw a straight line. It's hard to do. For me, that's even hard to do when I have a ruler. See? But that's a good approximation there. In my math lab, what you will do is you will click on the line indicator at the bottom. It's a line drawing tool. You'll click on the line drawing tool, then you'll click on this point, click. You'll click on the next one, click, and it'll automatically draw the line for you. So when you're looking at my math lab, it'll do that straight line drawing for you. Now notice if I had picked another point, say 1 or something, if I had plugged 1 in there, what would I have gotten? Negative 1. Notice this line is going through 1, comma, negative 1. So if you had picked a different point here, you would have still gotten the same line, you just would have gotten a different position on the line. So you can choose anything you want. You probably want to avoid fractions anyway, but my math lab doesn't really like for you to use the fractions. So sometimes it makes it impossible for you to use them. So you want to try to avoid them if possible. I don't think most of you would naturally pick them anyway. But what about when they seem like they're going to come out? Do you want them or not? For example, this example. Y equals 2/3 x minus 4. Now, what are we going to do about that fraction? Well, remember, the first thing in order of operations tells us to do what? Multiplication. And there's an invisible multiplication sign there. So when I make my table, I'm going to want to be careful and choose something so that it will cancel with that 3. So I want to pick a number here that's a multiple of this denominator. So that's going to make life easier. Choose a multiple of the denominator. Kind of running out of room there. So I'm going to choose a multiple of 3. What are multiples? Things that will be divisible by 3. Remember the divisibility from the beginning? So we want numbers that are divisible by 3. 0, 3, negative 3, 6, negative 6. Let's see, I'm going to start by picking, how about 3? So if I pick 3, y is equal to 2/3 times 3 minus 4. Remember that invisible 1 down there. So these are going to cancel. And I'm going to have 2 over 1, or 2, minus 4, which is equal to negative 2. So my point is going to be 3, comma, negative 2. So I'm going to go over to 3 on the x-axis and down to the negative 2. I need to pick another multiple of 3. How about negative 3? So y equals 2/3 times negative 3 minus 4. Again, there's an invisible 1 under there. Can I cancel this? What happens when I cancel 3 and negative 3? I don't get 1, I get negative 1. So my answer here is going to be 2 times negative 1 minus 4, or negative 2 minus 4, which is negative 6, which needs to go into my table there. That table point is the same as the point negative 3, negative 6. So I need to go over to the negative 3 on the x-axis, and up or down until I'm across from the negative 6. So in this case, I'm going to have to go down And I have to get my ruler and do my best to draw a line. Again, if you do these in my math lab, you will just click on the points and it will do the drawing of the line for you. By hand, you would just need to use a ruler or a piece of paper to connect those dots. Okay, I have one more to do. It's a little bit different because y is not solved for. In this case, the variables are both on the same side. So it's going to be a little harder to figure out what to guess or what to choose to put in my table. It's kind of a rule of thumb. It's not something you always have to do, but I find it's typically easier to look at the coefficients. Remember, there's an invisible 1 here, and find the larger one. This is 1 and this is 2, so 2 is larger. Larger in absolute value, so if this was -2, I would still pick it. So looking at the one that's larger in absolute value, I usually like to choose that variable. It's going to make me less likely to end up with a fraction. And I don't really want to end up with a fraction because they're difficult to graph, and really, even though I can deal with fractions, I prefer to avoid them when I can. And I know you're the same way. So let's pick a y value. I'm just going to pick 1. So I'm going to replace the y with 1 and figure out what x is. So x plus 2 equals 6. Subtract 2 from both sides, so x is equal to 4. So I need to now put the 4 in the table. Make sure if you pick it for the y that you write it under the y column so that the point that you actually graph is in the correct order. The point I want is 4 is the x and 1 is the y. So I'm going to go over to the 4 and up across from the 1. Okay, let's pick another value. I'm going to pick maybe -2. So I'm going to plug -2 in for the y, substitute. -2 in for the y. So that's going to give me positive times negative is -4. And I'm going to add 4 to both sides. Wait, I said 4. 6 plus 4 is 10. My graph paper doesn't go to 10. So even though that's a right point, I can't really use it because it doesn't fit on here. That's going to happen to you occasionally in my math lab too. So you're going to need to go back and pick yet a third number. So I'm going to pick perhaps 0. Let me pick 0. And I will put it over here. X plus 2 times 0 equals 6. So x plus 0 equals 6. So x equals 6. That point will be 6, 0. Here's the 6, and I go until I'm across from the 0, which is automatically true. And you can see 10, -2 would be down over here somewhere. It looks like it would go through there, but I don't actually have to try and draw it on there. All right, let's see if I can draw something that looks like a line through there. And you all, again, will be drawing it on my math lab, so you'll just click on the points and it will give them to you. Okay, there are going to be a couple other methods we can use, shortcut methods for graphing lines, and we'll look at those in the next 2 sessions.